Hello there everyone, and welcome back to Void War Studios, where we continue our week with a Warhammer episode. This time looking into the most numerous followers of she and he and it who thirsts, Deamonettes. Although Deamonettes is a bit of a misnomer. The demons themselves are neither male nor female. You will notice, if you're looking at all too closely, that many of them either have one breast or no breasts, or, well, sometimes, depending on the person's tastes, multiple breasts. Now, demonettes are the weakest and lesser form of demons that Slaanesh calls forth and summons to do its bidding. In Age of Sigmar, these are quite an interesting demon because they don't really... Whilst they exist in the realm of chaos, there are numerous warbands, mortal warbands, that have demonettes wandering around and, well, doing all kinds of fun things. This may, of course, change with the new Hedonites of Slaanesh book coming out, but from what we understand, when Slaanesh got captured, the demons and demonettes that were under its employ and power just continued to wander around and do whatever they wanted. Slaanesh being imprisoned didn't stop them from appearing, it just meant that they, well, didn't have any kind of leadership anymore, so they just kind of went around and did what their base instincts suggest they do. Corrupt, defile, change, seduce, and, well, excess, basically. These creatures have a unique ability where they have this strange pheromone-like musk. Anyone within any kind of close proximity to these things, it's a bit like being drunk, honestly, from the descriptions we have. It's a bit like a perfume. It's intoxicating, it confuses you, dulls your senses, sometimes overly heightens your senses. It does all kinds of things to confuse, disorientate, and generally make your life really, really difficult. And because demonettes are some of the fastest creatures in the Age of Sigmar universe, it means that they just swiftly move in and, well, stab you through the stomach, as they love to do with their fantastic crab claw hands. Also, demonettes don't always look like this. Demonettes can appear as, well, basically humanoid. They can appear as beautiful men or women that can tempt, beguile, and generally make you do things that you wouldn't necessarily do. Encourage and make you go down paths of hedonism and pain and pleasure that you wouldn't have necessarily considered. It is in the interests of these demonettes to do this because they feed off of these energies. The more pain, pleasure, lust, excess that there is around them, the happier they feel. And if it means they get to cover themselves in blood and gore and treat anyone around them like a party favour, then yeah, that's perfectly acceptable for them. They're more than happy to do this. Demonettes are also more than willing to trick individuals into going down these paths. Whilst not Tzeentchian in the level of plots and organisation that these demonettes can have, they are still capable of, well, confusing and seducing individuals who are more inclined. Even if you resist demonettes, the experience can potentially scar you for the rest of your life. There are documented cases, both in the Old World and in Age of Sigmar, of essentially demonettes who are killed, or of people who survive fight an encounter with demonettes no longer being able to take pleasure in the same things again, as though something from themselves has been partially killed in the process of killing the demonette. And even if they don't manage to kill the demonette and manage to get away, they still find themselves less able to experience joy as much as they used to. And that is quite simply because demonettes have this kind of power where anything you might have enjoyed, they can find a way to corrupt it and turn it into something far, far worse. The demonettes always look for some kind of leader. This tends to be in the form of a herald of Slaanesh or a keeper of secrets. But as I'm going to be predominantly looking at demonettes in this particular episode, I'm going to try and stick to the demonettes. Each demonette is a little bit of a prima donna. These creatures are absolutely obsessed, vain, and, well, sadistic in how they like to excruciatingly inflict pain on others. Demonettes are more than happy to sever your limbs and fingers and toes and cause as much pain as possible before you die. And they can do it with such lightning-fast reflexes that even hitting the things is surprisingly hard. A unit of demonettes is quite the challenge, especially when you get them in larger units. This is where demons excel. Because with the profile of having a single wound, 6-inch move, 10 bravery, and a 5+ save, yeah, the 5+ save is not going to save you from all that much. And the piercing claws, whilst very respectable, each one has 2 attacks, hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s with a -1 random 1 damage, they won't last long, which is why you take them in fairly big numbers. The Alluress is the wonderfully stylized lady with the big hair and the massive claws. She gets to add an extra attack, so 3 attacks. And of course you take your icon and standard bearers. For every 10 models you can choose to have an icon bearer, and for every 10 models you can also have a standard. So if you have a group of 20, you can in fact have both a standard and an icon. The icon works like this. If you roll a unmodified battle shock test and it comes up as a 1, you get to add D6 Deamonettes to your unit, which is amazing because it also means that the unit does not flee and counts essentially as passing the battle shock test. So yeah, this is one of the fun abilities that a lot of demon units have. The icon essentially is like, you could kind of think of it as like a teleport homer of sorts. The demonettes themselves essentially get summoned from the warp and appear next to this icon, drawn to the excess, slaughter, carnage, pain, and, well, those wonderful kind of emotions that seem to happen around demonettes. Standard bearers mean you get to reroll hits of 1 made for attacks including the standard bearer's attacks. So suddenly that hitting on 4 thing isn't so bad when you get to reroll your 1s. And in addition to the standard and icon, you can take a hornblower. This is 1 in every 10 models, so you can have a hornblower and an icon or standard, and then when you have 20, you can have all 3 of these. What it does is, when you have to take a battle shock test, you roll the dice as normal. If the unmodified roll for a battle shock test for an enemy unit that is within 6 inches is a 1, they have to re-roll it. Essentially, the sounds and music coming out of this horn fills the enemy with fear, and it means that they have to re-roll their battle shock test, meaning that it's entirely plausible that you're going to make more of them die and run away. A pretty handy ability, especially when, like I said, you only have a 5+ save, so you need to kill things as fast as you can. And this is where we start getting into the really good stuff. Sadistic killers. Because of Deamonette's ability to move incredibly fast, dancing around even elves on their best days, these claw-like hands are able to inflict really grievous wounds. Every time you make an attack with your piercing claws and the hit is a 6, it counts as 2 hits. And if you have 20 or more models, this increases so that every hit roll of a 5 or 6 counts as 2 hits. So yeah, when you have 20 to 30 of these demonettes, because yes, you could take them in units of 30 if you wanted to, yeah, that's a potentially ridiculous amount of hits. Now yes, it's if you roll a 5 or a 6 when you have 20 or more models, but still, that is a really ridiculous number of hits that you can potentially have. And because you get to re-roll 1s, yeah, that's unpleasant at the best of times. And now we get to the bit which essentially makes demonettes fast. Because that 6-inch doesn't sound that impressive, does it? Until you take into consideration the ability Lithe and Swift. Demonettes are fast, and you demonstrate this by the fact that they can run and charge. So you move your 6, you roll your dice, and then you charge. Meaning on a good day, you can get 10-inch movement out of these lovely ladies and gents and everything in between. And they will come forward bounding happily and gracefully, wanting to cut your extremities off. And then you have Locus of Excruciation. This is to represent that if you have a Herald of Slanesh nearby, these demonettes will fight all the harder, being invigorated and strengthened by their close proximity and power to their patron god. You re-roll unmodified hit rolls of 6 for attacks made with melee weapons that target this unit, so long as it's within 9 inches of a demon Slanesh hero. Now, that is potentially ridiculous, because it means not only are you potentially chucking out buckets loads of attacks, but your opponent who's trying to hit you, every time they hit you with a 6, they gotta re-roll that. and that's going to be incredibly frustrating for a number of units that can do things like mortal wounds, or, well, anything that gets to do extra hits, for example. That's going to make someone really frustrated. Now, it's fair to say that Deamonettes form the majority of your different units within the army, so Seekers are the natural extension of this. A Deamonette on a Seeker is, well, it's a Deamonette on a Seeker. The Seeker is a creature of Slaanesh that is obsessed with sensations. They have long live legs, flickering tongues a bit like an anteater, and they very much enjoy eating everything around them. Seekers tend to be the vanguard of all of Slaanesh's forces because these creatures are insanely fast. Your Deamonettes moving potentially 10 inches across the board is worrying enough, especially as you get to charge afterwards. But yeah, Seekers are far, far, far worse for the unsuspecting victim, because these wonderful creatures move even faster. With a very respectable movement of 14 inches, 2 wounds, 10 bravery, and that ever so fragile 5+ save, the Seeker is definitely something that's going to get across the board really, really fast. And you have your piercing claws as previously mentioned, and in addition you have 2 attacks from the Seeker with its poisoned tongue. The anteater tongue I mentioned, which, lashes out with a barb and poisons people. The leader of these Seekers tends to be called the Heart Seeker and gets an extra attack with their piercing claws, much like before. The Icon, Standard Bearer and Hornblower work in exactly the same vein as previously mentioned, and does the Sadistic Killers rule, which means, yes, you can have these units in 20 to 30 models, and on 5s and 6s you get to inflict 2 hits for every successful hit of a 5 or 6, meaning that these ladies can throw insane numbers of attacks with their claws. And then remember, you've got your poison tongues coming afterwards. Locus of Swiftness means that any demonic heroes who are nearby, they get to add 1 to charge and run rolls. Adding 1 to charge and run rolls means that there's definitely an awful lot of movement you can get out of these lovely ladies. And then with Quicksilver Speed as your last ability, you can roll 2d6 instead of a d6 when you run. And on top of all of that, you still get to run and charge in the same turn. 2d6 for your run movement. That's potentially insane. It gives you, obviously this is if you roll double 6s here, but this gives you a potential movement range of 26 inches. There are very, very few units in Age of Sigmar that can move even remotely as fast. And if you have a hero nearby, you add 1 to this, meaning 27, with a basic movement of 15 inches so long as your hero is within 12 of this unit. So yeah, this is why Slaanesh is pretty much the glass cannon of all glass cannons. Because you move insanely fast, you get into close combat, you hit like an absolutely insane drugged up truck, and you thrash, stab, pierce, bite everything in your way. It's only if you start somehow getting stuck into a brutal melee and the thing you're trying to kill isn't dying that you have to start giving yourself some very serious questions, such as, was it a good idea to charge this unit in the first place? However, even in death, Deamonettes tend to enjoy the experience, brief though it is. But hey, these are creatures formed of pure excess, lust, madness, pleasure, pain, and, well, all that wonderful crazy stuff that makes Slaanesh so interesting. I'm gonna call it a day for this video because Deamonettes form the vast majority of all units, but there are certainly a number of specialists that I want to keep for their own particular episode. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I hope you can understand a little bit about how terrifying a Slaanesh army can be. Slaanesh moves so fast and hits so hard that you really need to have one hell of a solid wall to stop them and then bludgeon them to pieces. Or, get first turn. That always helps as well. Anyway, this is Void Dwarf Studios. I hope you're all having a fantastic day wherever you are. And until then, take care everyone.